back
We
at
have
5:30 and
We had
work
a
at 6.
beautiful spring.
Probably should have.
I mean,
9,
the
it's
weather's
our
been
sleep.
great.
I don't know how much Bill is going to add to it or how much,
I gotta make sure I stop eating early enough.
I'll ask him.
yeah, that's,
And you know, it was open 24
Be an
hours.
interesting week, isn't it?
7
Yeah.
All these weeks are
7
interesting.
days.
Now through the fair week.
You know, a lot of people
Yeah.
be at an event here in Washington, they go out there to get breakfast.
Yeah, after, right.
We did that when we were
Oh, I did that.
running around.
Yeah.
I mean,
Conversation.
we would have some party and drink all.
End up-
Okay, we're ready, we're ready. Can we come to order, please? This is the Washington Area Highway Transportation Committee meeting. It is Monday, June 26, 2023. Gina, give us a,
Craig Miller,
Here.
Ed Fisher, Stephen O'Connor,
Here.
Ray Fairhaver,
Here.
Bob Ingeman, Bill Strauber.
here,
Mayor Hagedorn,
Here.
Joe Hoopmar,
here.
Sandy Lucy,
Here,
Bubby Escamp,
Here,
Bill Miller,
Here.
Tim Brinker, Mike Coulter, Jeff Niemeyer, Charles Stankovic, Darren Lane.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, good morning. Thank you all for coming. First item, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
I want to thank Gina for including those attachments.
Yes.
The maps and charts made a big difference for me. Thanks.
Yes, that does for me too, yes. I agree. What do we got? Amtrak. Craig, fire away.
Let's see. Don't have much. I think we have our next upcoming MORPAC meeting next month in July, if I'm not mistaken. I do know from our tourism director, Emily Underdown Hopkins, that she and a couple of other tourism folks from the different stops along the River Runner did a station takeover at a couple of stops in Illinois on June 21st and 22nd. And they're just promoting those rail stops and new service that goes straight through on the River Runner through to Chicago. So they're out there promoting that. Other than that, ridership seems steady, on-time performance, doing a little better than it had been through construction phase. And like I say, I'll get more of that data at our meeting next month, so.
That's an interesting, they're gonna go all the way to Chicago. And how far west?
How far west?
Yes.
Well,
City?
the River Runner doesn't continue past the Kansas City deal.
Kansas City, though.
So one of our two trains is now a through train to Chicago, and then the other train is, the traditional River Runner route. But yeah, at that point, you're at a transfer station heading other directions.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
how long did you get to Chicago from Washington?
How long? I don't know right off the top of my head. It was longer than driving. I think it was like maybe 6.5, something like that. Because it's like a 5-hour drive. I'd have to get that data for you, but
There's no stop now, or there's no?
no, they stop along there. It's a through train that goes, all the stops that go along the normal traditional River Runner route to St. Louis, and then St. Louis to Chicago. So that is you'll just stay on that same train as you go. But there are stops in Illinois, all the way up to Chicago as well.
you don't have to switch trains anymore.
Yep, I did read that they are increasing those speeds again also. They've kind of got through some hoops that, so they're hopeful to shrink that total travel time by a little bit on that Illinois route because they got some safety things passed that they were able to go a little bit faster between stops, so that was good. But I'll try to get that information for you for next time, LB.
They said this morning on TV, 15 minutes shorter with the
Yeah.
speeds.
It would be nice to know when it stops at each of the stops, just so that you can kind of look at it and see. Being on the Transportation Commission, I've looked for that a couple times over the past year or two, just getting online, and of course, I'm old, so it's not intuitive to me to be online. But if we can get like a little.
You see all the stations along the
just
River
to print
Runner?
out, yeah, that we could have, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
absolutely,
man.
I can do that. And I'll try to include that river, as it continues through Chicago, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great, yeah. Anything else on trains, Amtrak? Highway 47, Missouri River Bridge. We're gonna take that off the agenda. Is that okay, guys? That's been on there for, how
Are the
long?
lights still working?
Huh?
Are the lights still working?
I think so.
Yeah, they're working.
Although whether it's,
Darren, do you agree we can take it off the agenda, or?
I think it's always a monumental thing when we take something off this
I
agenda.
know it is. I know.
It's like a cause for a celebration. The Augusta Bottom Road was on here for God knows how many years. I never thought it would come off, but anyway, yeah, we can take it off.
Darren, does
Yes,
the city have the equipment to maintain it after 1 year?
No. We don't plan on buying it either. I think that'd be something we'd probably contract out. If we had problems, we'd have to work with MoDOT to figure out what's the best way to go ahead and fix it, but we're gonna contract that out. We're not gonna buy equipment for that, at least not in the foreseeable future.
I don't think I'd use the same company that installed them.
Well, there's others out there, so we'll figure that out, Bill.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
You guys, I'm okay with taking it off the agenda, but please keep it in the fairly close back of your mind that that Missouri River is still there, and even though it's been low for a long time, it's going to come up again, and it's going to affect our bridge, and it will. It just will. Who knows when? But we just need to keep that in mind. So
Yes.
until we get some roads raised.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna suggest. Do we
Yep.
need to consider putting something on, for moving it out of the floodplain, or the floodplain issue, so that we
That's
can get
correct.
updated on that?
That's correct.
Well, we have the causeway.
But
which
okay,
is
that's right.
On the agenda, which is
So the causeway will take the place of the bridge, and we'll move forward with our,
Causeway, Missouri River Bridge. We'll
There
put
you
them
go.
both, we'll put them together and not
Add
forget
to it.
either one of them, so. You're right, though. That bridge is such a key.
It is.
And in particular, across the river where you guys are doing the paving, great job. I mean, and you're having to do it at night, and that's tough. I hope, boy, you don't have.
Doing well, they're doing good. I think they're going today now.
Are they? Yeah, yeah. And so it's gonna be paved all the way up to Warrenton, is that correct?
The entire 47 past all week.
Up to Hawk Point? Hawk Point,
Oh, wait,
They got another crew working from Hawk Point this way.
yes. See, we take that for granted. That's amazing. That highway carries a lot of traffic. And that's like north-south shot from, actually, from 44. That's why it's so important to continue to get this through Washington with 4 lanes. That's a major thoroughfare for this area, particularly with the activity that's going on 70 and 270. Anyway, that's just beside the point. So we'll incorporate the bridge with the causeway. So if that's in agreement, we'll do that. Next item, Franklin County Transportation Committee. Jim?
Highway 47.
Highway 47.
Oh, Highway 47, I'm sorry. Highway Corridor Committee, I'm sorry. Either way.
Morning. The Highway 47 Corridor Committee, we have not had a meeting, but Franklin County, for the roundabout and expressway, we have been successful in obtaining about half of the properties. Those, we've already got the deeds on those. The City of Union is going through condemnation on a couple of their properties, so that's going to stretch that completion date out further probably. So that's the status of the express.
You know, that's great. I mean, that's movement. The monies are pretty well lined up. Is that correct?
Yeah.
To do that? You know, that's the first piece of this 47 from Washington.
Right, it's the
40.
bottleneck in the middle.
And it's the bottleneck, no question.
is.
And that's,
Every day, it's just,
but it's got a solution already identified. And where it's gonna go, condemnation of property, that's movement and that's progress. That's huge progress for this area. So,
it's unfortunate that they have to go that route, but they do.
very good. Thank you for your help and your effort. on
I'll just stay here because the next item is Franklin
Go
County.
for it. You got it.
The Transportation Committee, we are accepting grant applications for our grants. Those are due no later than 3 o'clock this Friday. We've not received any yet, but that's very typical. We don't receive them normally till Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Typically, we receive them on Wednesday and Thursday. It gives us an opportunity to just look through them and see if they're missing a signature or something like that.
So how many
But those-
grants do you have out there right now, Jim?
I'm sorry?
How many grants have identified for that, for your projects?
We don't go by number of grants, but we go by a dollar amount.
Dollar.
This year, it'll be a little better than $400,000 that's
Okay.
available.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Jim?
At our next meeting, I'll report, we will have had a Transportation Committee meeting the third week in July, so I'll be able to report what the status is on that, and dollar amounts and number of grants that we've looked at.
When do you think construction will actually start? I mean, just the actual construction of that?
On the grants that
The
we award, they can start anytime after July 1st.
Oh, wow,
If they start July 1st, they're eligible for a grant. If they start before July 1st, they can't apply for a grant for those projects.
very good.
It's just the way the grant program's structured.
Okay.
But the grants can run for 3 years. For example, downtown New Haven, they applied for a grant 3 years ago to develop their downtown area and redo the streets and the curb and gutters and the sidewalks and handicap ramps. They just applied for their grant reimbursement because we pay at completion. So, and they were successful and their job turned out quite well.
Very good, thank you. Anything else for Jim?
Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you for your report. Okay, now we're into 50/50 grant, oh, the 50/50 grant, MoDOT grants, is that? There, nothing?
I mean, we have, we've secured the 1.6 for the highway portion to get into Oldenburg Industrial Park, but that's the reason for that being on your agenda, is to cover that.
Sorry, I missed the Rotary when you made the,
I missed you too, Bill.
well, it's, you know, there's so much to tell people about what's going on.
Yeah.
And many times it doesn't get, it never gets to the people who, the business
Right.
people or whatever, the business community, unless they're lucky enough to read it in the newspaper. But yeah, that was a well-done article, I thought, of what's going on in Washington and the complexities of what's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
not just one thing, there's stuff going on. You guys got, and I guess, Charles, you're getting involved in it, I'm sure.
He's in
now.
the middle of it, so.
Just a little bit? Okay. Very good. So, we expect a lot from you.
You guys, one of the things that goes unsaid is the quality and the ability of our grant writers
Oh,
to
gosh, yes.
procure those funds. So kudos to Darren and his staff. Thank you.
You bet. You betcha. Warren County. Joe.
Thank you, Beetle. Other than paving, that's going on in 47, they're doing, Highway O's done, now completed. I think we got 72 miles total MoDOT did for us this year, which is very good. You know, AA, a lot of our areas, which is good. Thursday, I'll be going to Hannibal. There's our Northeast District with the 70 going through. A lot of our money is going to be allocated separately now. So we have, we're going to be going to our unfunded needs. So we're going to be able to take some of our money back that 70 is going to take care of. So we'll see where that ends up.
That's great. That's
So
great.
we'll talk about that in Hannibal on Thursday.
Well, that is just exploding from the Freightways organization. That area, Highway 70, 270, that whole area is just exploding with economic development.
And it's going
Businesses
It's
and-
going to get more,
Yeah, and there's more coming. That's right.
a large one coming,
Yeah, another large one, yeah. Yeah.
which is good for all of us.
Good for everybody.
Absolutely.
I bet you.
So that's about it right now.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Well, we didn't talk about the causeway.
Well, I'm going to bring that up on Thursday as well.
Oh, good.
So we had money funded for some.
Oh, okay, good.
That we don't have to spend now because 70 they're taking care of that.
Fantastic. So what do you think will be done first? Just out of curiosity of we're talking about this. They're gonna look at the Kutso area to see if that can get a remedy there for the water. Yeah.
At least
exactly, exactly.
So I'm gonna try to move that up to a high priority if we can, and take some of the money that you had elsewhere, we can put that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't put that together with, when you were talking about other projects. Yes, thank you.
That's definitely on our list.
That's on your list, yeah. You betcha. Very good, thank you. Washington Special Road District, anything new, anything going on? Other than Darren, those roads are looking great back in there, where the development's happening.
Road to participate, or with the road district to do their second phase of South Point Road, so.
Yeah, boy, there's lots of activity back there. Wow. Growth of Washington. So- Old Highway 100 Bridge, Steve, anything new?
There's nothing new.
Nothing? Has a study group been
We've
formed?
discussed it, but we've not got a consultant on board.
Okay, that should be a fairly,
It's pretty simple.
pretty simple process or whatever, just whenever it does.
I mean, we were going back and forth with Washington about what the bridge type will be. So I know some stuff was sent to John Neal just when he was there.
Charles,
So,
get him in the loop, because
yeah.
he's gonna be the guy that's gonna help you probably. Airport,
The hangars are being constructed. That's about the latest that I have. There's not really, other than that contract moving forward, that's about it. We've, are almost close to finding Kevin some help with an assistant manager over there. Hopefully have somebody on staff here in about another week or so. So, that's the latest.
good. Any other comments about the airport?
What's
Jerry?
going on in the extension of the runway?
We have those funds at our disposal. It will cost about the latest estimate that we've received from CMT would be 6.8 million to complete that project. We have 3 million that we've received from that omnibus bill. I believe we have to have plans approved by 25, 26, and construction has to be started by 2030, so it's a longer range project. But we will have to go ahead and see how we're gonna go ahead and meet that, come up with the local match to come up with that cost share, because obviously that's a significant portion. So I think you're talking about a couple of things. You're probably looking at transportation sales tax, how you want to go ahead and possibly utilize some of those funds to help. As you know, that expires in 2030. So unless the city goes back to the voters to go ahead and get that renewed, you're not going to have that funding source, but that's one of the projects that you could identify with that. So I think we're going to rely upon this committee to go ahead and take a look at that here in the next couple of years to see how soon do you want to go back to the voters and ask them for that renewal of that. So, I mean, that's the best funding source I can give you that we can have to match.
You talk about that far out.
Mhm.
Are the dollar amounts you're talking about today's dollars?
Well, that's the 6.8, I'll have to check CMT's estimate. My guess was that was probably 2 years in advance. So, but yeah, when you start talking that far out, LB, we're gonna have to go ahead and take a look at that.
But is it widening and lengthening?
Correct. It's widening it 25 feet and then lengthening it by another 500 feet.
500.
Correct. It's my understanding as a result of that, as Doug has explained to others, is that that helps our airport become, rather than just a fair weather airport or whatever, you know, people can fly in under the insurance, I guess, that some of the aircraft needs is the biggest issue, that they can't fly in today without those improvements, so.
Darren, is there still a lot of money available from the federal government for airports? At one time, there was quite a bit of money.
Yes, at one time, but I think a lot of that is, at least in our discussions with, when we met with the Representative Ann Wagner and some of the others, is don't be expecting a lot more money coming from the feds. She was very frank about it, put it that way. She just basically said, you know, it's great that you guys have received this, it's great that you got 3 million from that omnibus bill, but don't be expecting a lot more coming back from the feds. So, I don't know, but that's the best answer that she gave us with regards to it. But if there are, those would be some matching funds that we could go ahead and use to help get those improvements done, because coming up with another $3.8 million is not gonna be necessarily easy.
Darren, are there other funding sources for that? We got the $3 million from the federal government. Doesn't MoDOT provide some annual assistance for that too? Isn't it?
You do. You've got some, you've got a certain annual allotment that you get from MoDOT. As a matter of fact, you can borrow, you can use those funds in advance or whatever. And then actually, they even have a financing option that you can go ahead and utilize. So we're looking at all of those things. So you could probably get, I don't know, close to $1 million or more probably through that, and just, you know, allocate those future funds towards that improvement. And then you might be down to $1.5 million or so. I mean, if you're still talking about a $6.8 million project. So
If you don't do it, do you lose the 3?
I think, yes, we've got to use those funds, like I said, by those dates that I gave you earlier. I think you got to have some plans into them by 25, 26, and then you have to have construction, I think, by 30 is what they had given us.
Is the
Darren, are there-
transportation, oh, excuse me, go ahead,
Oh,
Bill.
go ahead.
Well, is the transportation sales tax still exceeding the expectations at this point?
It is,
or-
but you've got several projects. As a matter of fact, we're working on trying to give you I would like to go ahead and give you a budget on that funding from here to the end of,
Yeah,
you know, when it terminates in 2030. Between the airport, between the next agenda item, which is, well, not Team Track, but East-West Parkway. You know, the city's move forward with that, with some of these improvements. You also, with the announcement of the grant for the CMAQ application at Rabbit Trail and 100, you have a $500,000 commitment there. The other issue is with the rising costs that we're all dealing with. You had approximately 680 to 700,000 for your local streets, and now you're looking at probably closer to 1.1 million to keep that same program in place.
Right.
So those funds are probably allocated all the way out. And that's why we're
Yes.
taking a look to see what we can pull from those towards the airport to get some of that project moving sooner, so.
Okay, thank you.
It's really important to get the passage or the renewal of the half-cent transportation tax. And hopefully we could get it for another 25 years would be ideal, just to.
I think what you're, you know, obviously the two major highways are ones that we want to go ahead and see improvements. You want to see Highway 100 be expanded to 4 lanes all the way to Voss Brink Drive. That's always been a long-range priority. And obviously our participation with how far we want to see 47 go to 4 lanes as well. Those are two major projects that I can see that those funds need to go ahead and be renewed in 2030 for us to go ahead. Otherwise, if we don't get that renewed, we've
Right,
got
that has to go
Yeah,
for the
we're-
voters, and
Right.
it's a
The good
tax
news,
increase, but it's a renewal.
I think the city has used those funds very wisely.
Yes, they have.
And
Absolutely.
have maximized every bit of it. And that's why we take advantage of every federal grant that we have to go ahead and use those for match funds, et cetera. So hopefully the voters see value to that. And I think that that's why it may warrant a discussion sooner than 2030, if you want to identify those projects and maybe go to the voters ahead of time. It certainly would help from a
Prepared for-
planning perspective.
Yes, I agree with you. Let's get.
So,
let's-
I mean, it's time may not be right now, but I mean, a couple of years from now, you can start thinking about going to the voters a little bit ahead of time.
Absolutely. I think that has generated more than, what, $32 million, I think, since.
Yeah, I could get you a little bit
20 I
better
think we got it probably on one of the sheets.
report on that. But I think you do have those funds allocated pretty much from here on out to 2030. Even with the increase of what we've received in the sales tax, it's great that the sales tax has done that well. But unfortunately, we're all dealing with the inflation of it all too, and projects, I mean, you're still talking 30% higher than what. You know.
Again, I
We
can't-
just got bids in actually on Third Street. Thursday, the estimate was 1.5 is what they came in at. So there you go. That's what you're dealing with.
That's what's happening.
Aaron, are flying lessons still being given there?
I'm sorry?
Are there flying lessons available at the airport?
I'm not aware of whether or not they are. I don't know. Ray, do you know of any? I'm not aware of.
I think it's on an informal basis, Bill.
So there's a couple things we were telling people before I left the airport was you go into Spirit and we would identify where the teachers were and where the schools were that were around. And in some cases, the schools come out here. So all of those are available if you have people interested. We never did really have the amount of people interested to support a school and an instructor out here full-time. So it's always good to have it available. The same way with mechanics. You really need to know where those planes can go to get maintained, and you need to know where people can go to participate in aviation.
How long is the runway at Spirit?
I don't remember whether it's 8
One of
or
them's
10. It was, I think
8,000.
8,000 feet long.
And
Yep.
the other one's 5,500, and that's what we're shooting for.
Yep. 5,500 is going to be a bare minimum, but you do have Spirit up there that you can go to as a reliever if you can't make it into here with that length. But the bigger the aircraft and the more large aircraft that want to come in, it means that that's how much more our businesses are growing and how much people are using Washington as their base to get in and out of. And with the changes in the business environment and employment, they're pushing people out to these type of areas. They'd rather be here than tight in a metro area with the expense of getting around there. So I would definitely be one to help promote getting that tax passed now. Right now, the demand's here, and I think the people see it here. People want the improvements in the type of jobs and the quality of your work environment and things like that, and that's just going to mean they're going to have to get here to Washington to do that. And we need to also never forget when we talk about the causeway and the flooding, that's the access to our airport as well.
Gotcha.
So the more we rely on it, the more important all these things come. So we've got some big projects we need to think about due to the unique nature of Washington being right on a Missouri River. I mean, one of the largest rivers in the world, and it takes money to safely get back and forth across it. If we were in the middle of a plain, we could bring roads in anywhere at a relatively cheap cost. So transportation is something that we need to allocate for.
Darren, is there a process of doing a voter initiative early on like the half-cent transportation tax?
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
not to
think,
duplicate with the.
we
half-cent
haven't discussed it in detail, but, what would have to be done. But I mean, basically, I think you could go to the voters early so that we know automatically that it's in 2030, we're not,
So again.
in limbo.
You got the half-cent capital improvement tax that's coming.
That comes up in '26. So here's, I think that what you have to look at is passage of that capital improvement sales tax first, and then shortly after that, see between that window between '26 and '30, when you would go back to the voters and do it. Or you could propose, sky's the limit here. I mean, you could go to the voters and propose the renewal of both of them at that time, maybe. I don't know. Lot to think
A
about.
lot to think about.
Oh, wow, that's a lot to think about.
but that's, but you could do that, or you could sit there and wait for the passage of capital improvement sales tax, and then you got between 26 and 30 then to go to the voters and renew. You could do 2 years later, so you could do it in 2028 if you wanted to. Go to them early and ask them.
Again, if you had the vote early and it passed, of course, if you've got it then, but what happens if it doesn't pass? Can you re-up it a second time? or
You can
try-
keep going back to the
Going back.
polls
Yeah,
if we
it has to
didn't.
be
I don't
renewed by
want-
the
I don't
voters.
want to have to do that, I'm just.
No, right, but I'm saying if you did, that's why if you went to the voters early, at least you could plan in advance for some of these projects to make sure that you had the funding available.
If we can get the lanes there before the traffic needs those lanes, I mean, think of all the times we've driven on a road
Oh,
under
gosh, yes.
construction, said, why didn't they do this 10 years ago instead of having us drive 5 miles an hour
Yeah.
for 5 miles on 270 or in the metro area? So I think right now would be a good time to have that vote, when people like being here and know we want to bring more people here. Our businesses are poised for growth. If the city limits of Washington inside those limits hasn't grown, we sure as heck have if you just go a little ways out. And those dollars are coming here in sales and jobs and medical and all that. So
Well, the population has grown, and we anticipate that it will continue with, especially with the apartment development out there on Highway 100 that you've seen cleared off for quite some time. And those are That's supposed to be another 300 units out there. So we anticipate that's going to go ahead and grow. I'm not concerned about, you know, showing the need for that there. But I think you've got, you know, several of these projects that we've got coming up. I think the best thing what we can do is maybe, Charles and I've thought about trying to get in front of this board, basically, what do we have between now and 2030? How much tax do we anticipate to go ahead and pull in? And then figure out all of these projects that we've got. And now that we know that, you know, like this Rabbit Trail and 100 application, you know, that's, the council committed $500,000 towards it. So there's half of 1 year's, you know, street maintenance. So,
You need to come up with your plan.
yeah, we can come up with your plan, and then you guys can go ahead and take a look at it and say, okay, how do we prioritize this? But at least we can say, here's how the money could be spent between now and 2030. And then you can say, these are the projects that we would need to do beyond that. And how do we secure that funding? But I think it is important that you get that tax renewed prior to that, or at least you have that. So that if you do have to do some creative financing, just like we did with the cost share with MoDOT to get 100 to 4 lanes, you can go ahead and do that.
Been the key.
Yep.
This half-cent transportation tax, I can't imagine Washington without it.
No.
That it just wouldn't be. It wouldn't be with the improvements that, along with Highway 100, the improvements in the city, the streets and everything.
I don't think we want to go back to chip and seal.
No. Well, you've got a pretty good
Aaron,
idea of
do
what's
the
going to happen.
industrial prospects still put an airport as a pretty high priority?
I think it's always a priority. Like I said, what's helped us probably in the last 10 years is being able to go ahead and show how close we are to 4 lanes. You know, because typically they always want to know when Sal fills out those requests for information, one of the questions that they usually ask is, what's the distance between the site and the interstate, 4-lane highway? Sometimes they'll ask for a 4-lane highway, sometimes they'll ask for the interstate, et cetera. But you go ahead and you answer that. But that's always important. That and the fact that you've got a regional airport that they can fly into if they need to go ahead and take a look at it.
We have some industries that use the airport on a regular basis, don't we?
We do. You're right. So it's important.
Darren, do you want to address the capital improvement sales tax at this point? Or is it too early?
As such as, what specifically? We have projects that are still out there yet that the city's working on. We've got some rehab of some buildings that we have to go ahead and do. We've got a firm that's going to put together our specs for the city auditorium. There's some insulation of that roof that we want to do. That building's going to take quite a bit of, as a matter of fact, you're going to have to pass another sales tax probably to do all the things that are needed for that. But I mean, that's up to that committee to go ahead and take a look at it. But you've got some other improvement projects out there. If we eventually want to move the Parks Department office space out to by the pool there at the old pool house, turning that into their parks office space, that's one of the projects. And then the biggest thing that we've still got on that sales tax is the building of a new fire station in the southeast part of town. That's the biggest project yet that's on there. So we're working on all of those.
And new fire equipment. I mean,
Yes,
there's a lot
correct.
of equipment that has to be replaced or should be replaced or could be, is up for replacement, let's put it like that, best way. It's well maintained, but it still is equipment that has a lot of use. And again, that equipment most of that is funded through the half-cent
Capital improvements.
capital improvement
Yep.
sales tax. So important, those two taxes.
And we just spent almost $1 million last month buying a new fire truck.
Exactly.
Gotta have it.
Yeah, and the stuff, they maintain it well.
Yeah.
As well as it can be, but the stuff does just wear out. It just, from use, gets a lot of use. And that's really the only source, one of the major sources of the funding for the fire department is the not the transportation, but the capital improvement tax. And that's its only funding, basically. I think that's fixed, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Darren. Team Track, anything there?
Nothing new, but East-West Parkway, I believe we got some new design plans last week from Wunderlich. for that first phase. And again, the phase we're referring to is the stretch of about 1,100 feet going from Beaker Road down there at where the Coke Farms are located. From that stretch of Beaker Road going, like I said, 1,100 feet to the east. So that's one phase of it, but that's going to be your first, besides the extension of High Street, that'll be your first phase of another area that we, you know, that, as we all know, that corridors goes all the way from Highway A to South Point Road, but this is one of the first times we'll be building within that, the scope of that.
And thank you for including this information about the parkway in the packet. That's
Oh,
very interesting.
I didn't know we put it in there, so thank Gina.
Yes,
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
yeah. Anything else on that? From the packet, it's interesting to see what's gonna happen in the amount of homes and stuff that you've got that are gonna be planned, that are gonna be right up against that or whatever, the East-West Parkway. I mean, that's gonna be a major.
Well, and the key is to go ahead and limit the access. I mean, that's the reason why we get
Sure.
into those agreements with the developers, because you don't want those driveways coming right off of there. I mean, that's not the ideal situation. You know, obviously, like if, for example, if the city could have waved a magic wand and, you know, even a street like Rabbit Trail where you had direct access, you know, to it, that's just not, that's not the ideal situation, but you live with what you
Again,
have.
thank you for those, Gina, for that information also. Charles, I guess you put this together. Do you have any comments about those intersections that, from your vantage point, needs or changes, or we're trying to get you, we're gonna get you involved. You're key to help.
Specifically like the East-West Parkway and Rabbit Trail and all
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Just your thoughts on what.
Yeah, I think it's just really important, just seeing that progress go forward and like the Earthcrest extension and just connecting all these different, you know, streets together and giving people different, you know, ways in and out, so.
You want to tell them a little bit about the design with this first phase?
For East-West Parkway? Yeah, so we were, what they sent over, basically, we were talking about possibly putting in a bike lane as well. And they came back with a design to maybe put that on the shoulders, you know, with some separation, but on the shoulders, so at least we have some bike access too for the future. And then we can always, you know, change that up if we get a grant later on and we want to make that a separate bike trail, we can do that as well. But kind of gives us, you know, thinking of the future for bike access seems like a big thing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what is it, 80-foot right of way with 40-foot wide pavement to start with 2 lanes, 12-inch or 12-foot wide, 8-foot shoulders. So then they're proposing 5-foot bike lanes on either side with a 3-foot buffer in between, and then room for an expansion of 3 12-foot lanes with shoulders. So they're going to grade out another 3 feet to get us that. So.
Yeah.
It's a major street.
Yeah, you're gonna make it a major street.
Right.
You're gonna-
Start it off
You're gonna go
right.
into it thinking it's going to be a major street. That's the good part about this.
Right, future planning, you know,
Thinking
that's,
ahead.
it's big. So,
Yeah,
and having
great.
all that right away, I think will be huge in
Great.
case we want to do something different.
Yeah, we're gonna tax your brain a lot, Charles.
And also, when you get confronted, I think, with people that are going to oppose this, because they'll be out there, is they need to realize that you can't have growth. You can't have your children and grandchildren growing up in this same community if we don't plan for that growth. And it's going to take major roads periodically, and if you don't, you've just got gridlock to where everybody's stuck trying to get through one intersection that doesn't flow well. So planning ahead and getting them out there is not a bad thing. It allows all that growth to make that a jumping point. So, good
Right.
luck.
Like, thanks.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charles.
What else do we have on here? East-West Gateway 2050 plans, is it where we're in?
I can speak to that. I was at the Executive Advisory Committee meeting. I know that East-West Gateway has to have that, they would like to have that draft finalized by the end of this month. I think the Board of Directors are voting on it maybe tomorrow. If Tim was here, I don't know. Like I said, I know Tim sits on the board of directors, Tim Brinker, so I don't, but I think they wanted to have that completed by the end of this month, and so they're on track to do that.
Very good. End of July, right? Or you mean?
End of June,
Oh, cool.
this week,
Oh, boy.
so.
And that's to identify projects going.
Those are, that's much larger projects throughout the metropolitan area. We can get you a copy of the report. I will tell you while I'm up here too, comments on, we have 2 applications that we received, that we are on the list to receive funding. As I mentioned earlier, Rabbit Trail on Highway 100, that's $2.3 million total project, 1.8 coming in federal assistance, as well as West 3rd Street from High to Jefferson. Is that the scope? Which will be, and both of these projects are looking at construction in 2026. The 3rd Street project will be $2.5 million total, with $2 million coming in federal assistance for it. And again, they did take those numbers into account the best they could for inflation to be built out to 26. But both of those projects are recommended to be funded that way. There will be a workshop in Pacific at the City Hall on July 11th. Is the local, or at least the Franklin County, the closest available place to go ahead, and that's at 4:30 to 6. So I would encourage you to put that on your calendars, and if you can, attend that meeting. I will be out, unfortunately, I'll be out of town that week, but I'll have Sal and/or Charles attending there for the city to answer any questions people have about those projects. But if you'll remember, we've hosted those before when they've asked us to, and it's basically if people have any questions about the project, so they want to put in comments. We did have a meeting with a couple of the stakeholders that are at that intersection. I think my assessment of that meeting, and they're not excited to put that. They don't feel that there is, that these improvements are necessary, and they feel that the access that's there now is, although it's not ideal, it doesn't warrant the level of the city's participation with this. I think that's a fair assessment of our meeting.
I agree.
But I told them, there are meetings where they can go ahead and voice their concerns or comments about those improvements at that meeting on July 11th. So,
And that's in Pacific, you said?
correct.
Gina, could you give us just a memo on that?
Yeah.
So we got it right?
We'll send an email out
Send an email
to remind you.
to remind us. I do think it's important to at least show up for those things.
Yeah.
Many times,
And just to be
Just a lot.
clear, what the city's looking to do in general, at least on the Rabbit Trail and Highway 100 intersection, on International going southbound, there would be a dedicated right turn lane to go west on Highway 100. Those are the improvements on the north side. And then on the south side, that's the thing that's, like I said, got those other stakeholders more concerned, is to relocate Phoenix Center Drive further south. We had several different versions of a draft where you put in like a serpentine road similar to what you have behind Lowe's, to where that intersection of Phoenix Center Drive would not be that close to Highway 100. And then you've moved that intersection further south to line up with the entrance to Planet Fitness that's out there, if you're familiar with the area. So, but obviously that cuts into some of the parking area that's involved with the cinema. But to make sure everybody is clear, Phoenix Center Drive is not a dedicated city street until you get up to the Phoenix Center 2 development, which is beyond the entrance to where you turn into Phoenix Center 1 by several hundred feet. So that has always been a public access easement, if you will, but it's not, the city doesn't, it was never built to city standards, and so the city does not go ahead and maintain that stretch of roadway. That is up on the developer to go ahead and do that. So with this proposal, all of that would be dedicated right away to get back over to Rabbit Trail Drive. And we would also have to work with MoDOT a little bit, because they own some excess property where the sign is located out there close to the Highway 100 improvements. Some of that we would rely upon MoDOT. We've had discussions in the past, if we move around that intersection, make that intersection better, that they would go ahead and work with us to go ahead and get that additional property. And what you may need is to give that back to Mittlers to take care of possibly losing some parking spaces if you run that right away through their lot. So part of the idea, I think, that the city had with that application to begin with was that there are a lot of expensive improvements there, and rather than putting that all on the local sales tax dollars, which it's quite a bit. I mean, especially if you go out there and you have to go ahead and acquire right away.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking prime commercial real estate that you're gonna be paying, throw out a number, $15 a square foot, whatever it is, I don't know.
More.
Yeah, there you go.
Everything's going up, and I think that's the big thing. We're not gonna get less traffic here, we're not gonna need less commercial in the future. People aren't moving away from Washington right now, and I say this a lot, but our children and grandchildren may be moving back, which I think is pretty awesome as my grandchildren get older. So, yes, it may not seem as needed now, and now's the time to do it, because it's definitely, we can project that it will get worse, the traffic condition will, and the property values are gonna get higher, and the construction's gonna get more expensive. So if we can get it done now, and with some money from the federal government, it's best for everybody.
That's what we were looking at, is that if we have to go out there and purchase right away to go ahead and make this project work, it's better to go ahead and get funding through East-West Gateway to go ahead and do that. It makes it a lot less painful. And I think those are the two major points of improvements at that intersection that application identified, and again, we're on the list to be funded. So, but like I said, I think it's very important, if you feel that those are worthwhile improvements that the city needs to support this grant, I think we're gonna need some support to go ahead and show that, yes, these are worthwhile applications, so that East-West Gateway, because I anticipate they're gonna have a couple of them that are not gonna be in favor of it, and they're gonna submit those. Just so you know.
And we'll have, Rabbit Trail Drive will actually join Stonecrest over in that area eventually, and that
Yes.
help alleviate.
Also,
traffic.
that is correct. We've also looked at making the connection. We've been trying to work with the developer between Rabbit Trail Drive and, as Joe mentioned, Earthcrest over there to make that connection. And that would also, you're right, alleviate a lot of, or at least give motorists the option, especially those that are building on that Coke Farm, those subdivisions further south, closer to Beaker Road, as they go north towards the Phoenix Center 2 development, they will have that option to go ahead and make that immediate right, rather than get all the way down to Phoenix Center Drive before they make the right to get in.
And the plan is to eventually hit Beaker Road with that as well, right?
Sorry?
That will extend to Beaker Road also?
Yes, we're already, the roadway's open.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Rabbit Trail is open from Beaker all the way to 100.
Yeah, it's right, if you look at it over here.
And that's another one of these transportation, costs that the city decided to go ahead and move forward with, because the developer was willing to work with us, and we went ahead and paid our fair share, or at least our portion of that, to go ahead and make that connection happen. So,
Great thinking, great forward thinking. Thank you, Aaron. So I do think it's important to go to that July 11th meeting in Pacific, just to be there in presence or whatever. So Gina, get us out, get a email out to us so we don't forget it. It's gonna be in the afternoon, late afternoon. That's always, I guess it works. Whatever. We'll make it work, whatever. Anything else on that item? Public transportation? Joe, anything? Nothing new. Our gentleman that came in gave us the proposal on his taxi thing.
he gave some vague stuff, but it was not really anything that we could, I guess, it wasn't enough to get a warranted discussion yet, put it that way.
I understand. Very good. Thank you. Any other business?
I mean, I've got something.
Go.
MoDOT did release our 5-year draft STIP. That's for years 2024 to 2028. And it's on the MoDOT website. And anyone can go in there and look at the program and comment on it. Comments are due by July 6th of this year, of course. So there's a couple weeks to get in there and do your comments. And Some of the projects that were in our STIP last year, because of inflation and the cost of construction projects, have been moved back a year. So just so everyone knows, and there's not a lot of new projects in the draft STIP either because of the cost of projects. So, but again, you can go to www.modot.org to get on the website and look at the draft STIP.
Again, it's so important to get projects into into the funnel. I always talk about the funnel. It takes a long time for it to get down, but if you don't have it put in at the top, some of the projects that we're talking about, they've been in the making for 20 years. 20 years it's been laying up there, but it was in the funnel. And now we're like Highway 47, it's gonna get built. Now, it took a long time for it to work its way through, but the study was done 25 years ago, the first study, and now the study that's actually gonna build it is being done. And is, as we talk, it's being done. But the funding is somewhat there for Highway 47, you know, to get to at least Union. That didn't just come out of the sky. That's 25 years ago that started. So anyway, that's how it works.
We'll get, when we send that, when Gina sends that email out about the workshop on the 11th, we'll do it a separate paragraph with a link, so you guys can go ahead and comment on that.
Very good.
Oh, good.
You bet. Cool.
One last thing real quick. I noticed a couple weekends ago, there was a whole bunch of people downtown with buckets of black paint, painting the signage along the streets and scrubbing up some of the flower pots and so forth. And I think it makes a big difference. I don't know why taking it from a galvanized signpost to a black signpost looks classier, but it just does.
It does.
Just the whole new signage and whatever that MoDOT is actually doing, a lot of new signs, replacement of old signs, straightening them up, makes a whole big difference, as you said. They're minor, but you notice them. You notice that there's a new sign or a new painted sign or, in downtown Washington, they've been classic at doing this stuff, keeping it up.
They're
making
looking
the
at
place look.
replacing that signage too, because the ones the chamber funded years ago are getting a bit outdated, they need
Yes.
to be updated. So I think that they're proposing to do some signage.
Yeah, who would think that signage makes a difference in a look of a community, but it does, to me it does. I go into a community and I see all the signs are nice and straight and it's new signs, painted, whatever, grass cut. It has an impression. So, that's just me. Anything else?
I have a question. I've been seeing that we're about to do the underground electric on Front Street. Has there ever been a consideration of doing underground on Elm Street? You drive down Elm Street and you got those poles are hanging over the highway, over the street, and it's just ugly.
Yeah. To answer your question, has it been considered? Yes. Has it ever been to the point where we've hired, some design to go through with it? No. I think if you wanted to, that would be another, the idea was, back in the mid-2000s, I guess, or even prior to that, when we buried most of the stuff, Jefferson was like a starter, to see how that would work. And then to try to go ahead and see if you wanted to do something very similar to that with Elm Street, you would have, it's a lot, there's a lot more challenges. I mean, where are you gonna go ahead and put, where are you gonna get easements for, the transformers, et cetera, that you're gonna go ahead and have to take out of the air and put them down on the ground. And Ameren was never really they never get excited when we mention burying them. That just doesn't seem to be an option, but long answer to your question, yes, it's been considered. I think what you would, in order to make it reality, you would have to go ahead and make it an application through East West Gateway, just like we did with Jefferson Street, to go ahead and get that funded. But it's been talked about, and obviously the bigger concern is we didn't have near as much business interruption when we did Jefferson Street as what we would anticipate on Elm. But it's been considered, it's just not been to the point of, has anybody, paid an engineering firm to go ahead and come up with some plans to present to Ameren and to get the grant funding? That hasn't happened yet.
The city looked at that back in the 1950s.
Oh, boy, see?
It's been around a long
See,
time.
it's a trick question. See, it depends on how old you are.
It's really pretty bad if you look at it.
Bad,
compared
terrible.
Oh, it's really,
Yeah.
Anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned.
You know, they looked at that.
thank you.
50. I remember I was
Yeah.
covering the city council meeting,
Our hands,
and
a little ahead of,
one plan was to put them behind the building.
Good stuff, good stuff.
huh? What time is it? 8:55.
Nothing ever happened.
Well, you have a good week.
It looks
You're
terrible.
Commissioner Runner.
Yeah.
This time of year, my car doesn't stop.
Because that's
Vacation, my son was staying at home watching the dog in my air conditioner.
really, really obvious.
home
It's
watching
gonna
the
start
Not
looking
only the hangover.
He was not happy.
a lot